Hello and welcome to the Cancer Education Series brought to you by MercyOne and Above and Beyond Cancer. My name is Chris Goodale and I'm the Executive Director of Above and Beyond Cancer, and it is my sincere pleasure to introduce the founder of our organization, Dr. Dick Deming, who will introduce our speaker for this evening. Dr. Deming?
Great, thanks Chris. Good evening, everyone, and it's my honor to introduce our speaker. It's a colleague of mine who works at Mercy Cancer Center, Melissa Cribari. Melissa is from Des Moines. She went to Roosevelt High School, and then she went off to Colorado, did her undergrad work at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and got her master's degree in counseling at the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley. And we got her back here to Des Moines. She is a licensed mental health counselor, and I've had the opportunity to share many patients with her. Really pleased to have her on our team. Her discussion tonight is about strengthening your mental health. And with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up my slideshow here first. Hopefully, sorry.
There we go.
Can we see it?
We can.
Okay, good. All right. So I think I'm gonna have to switch it here. Sorry, I'm having a little lag time. Okay, how's that? Okay, so tonight I'm going to be talking about strengthening your mental health, and I feel like it's probably important for us to start with really understanding what mental health is. And you know, we oftentimes see a stigma in regards to mental health, and meaning that there must be something wrong with me, and it's more linked to maybe chronic or severe types of diagnoses that we may see. But tonight we are going to talk a little bit more about some of the more common mental health stressors that we may see in regards to stress, depression, and anxiety. So let's start first with a mental health definition here. So according to the World Health Organization, we're looking at mental health as a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her abilities, can cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively, and be able to make a contribution to his or her community. So what we're really looking at is, you know, this is the state of our emotional, our psychological or social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, how we interact with others. It's how we go about earning a living and how we enjoy life. So we can definitely have some stressors that come with that. And so we're looking at stress being defined as kind of our interpretation of a specific event, what we might call a trigger or stressor, that we might view as being threatening or challenging. So oftentimes when that happens, we can have a stress response that comes with that. And sometimes we hear that referred to as fight, flight, freeze, excuse me. And you know, that is something that evolutionarily has helped keep us safe in emergencies, and releases a lot of adrenaline and cortisol. But unfortunately, what we're seeing now is that we more often are just living this very fast-paced lifestyle, doing more in less time, having more responsibilities. And so that's often triggering this stress response for us when we don't really need it to. So stressors can come from the job, finances, relationships. Of course, we have major life events, illnesses and divorce and death, or just our daily tasks and responsibilities. You know, we can see our stress response sometimes set off these days just by a traffic jam, you know, road rage. So We have about 75% of adults that report having a physical or emotional symptoms to stress. So, this can be sadness, frustration, headaches, feeling fatigued, having some sleep disturbances. Perhaps we're not able to sleep through the night, or we're having trouble falling asleep, or waking too early in the morning. Chronic stress then can increase our risk of anxiety, depression, infections, cardiovascular issues, diabetes, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, Alzheimer's, so on and so forth. So we know that with the chronic unmanaged stress, we can look at having some symptoms of depression. Depression affects about 7% of Americans American adults at some point in their life. And it happens to be the leading cause of disability right now. So we're looking at some of these symptoms here being for 2 weeks or longer, persistently being sad, anxious, feeling empty, kind of a negative thinking pattern, feeling hopeless, tearful, irritable. We can have some guilt or worthlessness that goes along with that. Losing interest in our daily activities, hobbies, fatigue and energy. We can be very restless. We can also be a little bit more slow moving or speaking. We can have difficulties with concentration, appetite, and of course then with some more severe depression, we see thoughts of suicide or even suicide attempts. I think one thing that kind of goes to the wayside when we're talking about depression symptoms is we can also have some physical symptomology that goes with that. So just feeling, aches and pains and headaches and cramps and digestive related issues are often things that can go along with depression as well. Anxiety was one of those other markers that we saw higher risk for with that unmanaged chronic stress. Anxiety, an estimated 31% of adults are going to experience some sort of anxiety in their lifetime. So this looks like feeling restless, very on edge, again, fatigue, difficulty concentrating. We can have kind of mind going blank, people forgetting what they're talking about, what they're trying to accomplish, what their list of to-dos are, being irritable, having some muscle tension, difficulty with controlling worrying. This obviously oftentimes can keep people staying awake at night. So here we have those sleep disturbances again that can play a role in that. So what do we do with all of this? We have to look at when we're having additional stressors in our life, possibly leading into some anxiety or depression with it being so common. We're looking at creating a good self-care plan. We need to have a good idea of what it looks like to have some coping skills to deal with the day-to-day and the big things that may come our way. So, I think that it's important to mention right now we're looking, of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic as well. So that's creating some extra stressors, anxiety, even some depression for some. But even before we had, these extra stressors, there was a study that came out in 2018 from the APA talking about that 27% of our Generation Z, so those are our teens and young adults, were reporting to have fair to poor mental health. That's pretty significant. And that's in compared to, millennials at about 15%, Generation X about 13%, baby boomers about 7%. So that's pretty high. 27% of our teens and young adults struggling with mental health issues. And like I said, that was prior to the pandemic. So we're looking at some of that being, again, lifestyle, this doing more, having, a fast-paced life, and also technology. That plays a big role, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute too. But there's something called techno-stress. We are constantly plugged into something on a computer, a laptop, a tablet, a television, a phone, and that can be creating a lot of this extra stressor for us too. So let's talk about what it looks like then to have good self-care. So self-care by definition, is what we look at as kind of multidimensional and both, looking at the mental and physical well-being that can enhance our quality of life and a sense of personal fulfillment. I'm going to talk about these 7 different domains here in just a minute, but a lot of times when I speak with my patients about self-care, when I ask, what does your self-care plan look like, or what are your coping skills? How do you manage with these stressors, or the anxiety or depression that you might be experiencing? I get a couple of different answers. Sometimes it is, oh, I don't do anything for self-care. I don't have time for that, or that's selfish. A lot of times my caretakers by nature will say, I'm taking care of other people. I don't take care of myself. That would be taking time away from them. We talk about the importance of being able to care for ourselves too. The other side of that spectrum is I'll have people tell me that, oh, I take a bubble bath, or I do my nails or my hair, and those are good self-care items too. And they have their place within, these 7 domains, but that's not really what we're looking at. We want to really break that down into each specific area of our life and recognize what it is that we are in need of to make sure that we are in a good place with managing our day-to-day stressors, or those big stressors too. So as I go through these 7 domains, I usually ask people to take a close look at what you may already be doing and give yourself a pat on the back for that. Maybe there's going to be something on here that you've already tried and has kind of gone to the wayside. Okay, maybe we want to get back on track with that, or something that you're looking to bring into your self-care to practice a little more self-compassion. So let's start with the first domain, physical. So this is our nutrition, our exercise, our sleep, right? We need to make sure we're getting those fruits and veggies in, we're drinking plenty of water, we're exercising. Is that going to be a walk, a run, yoga, biking, whatever that might be, dancing, whatever that looks like, getting in some activity and exercise. Sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night. Now this is usually a go-to when I have people come into the office. As you witnessed, a lot of our stress symptoms, anxiety symptoms, depression symptoms can include some sleep disturbances. So whether that be, trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, or, not sleeping enough or sleeping too much, we want to make sure that we're really identifying that. There's some research from the American Heart Association that states that less than 6 hours chronically, less than 6 hours of sleep per night, can have a higher risk of cardiovascular issues. So we're really trying to aim more to that 7 to 9 hours a night to make sure that we're well rested. Now, a lot of the things that I'll hear is, I can't shut my brain off, or I don't really have a routine. So, just a few pieces of sleep hygiene. We want to make sure that we do have a good kind of schedule in regards to putting ourselves to bed about the same time every night and waking around the same time every morning. We really do sleep best when we're in a cool, dark, quiet room. I have plenty of patients that will tell me differently. They really enjoy having their television on, or they're used to falling asleep with their phone in their hand. And that can be really hurtful for us because of the blue light. There's a blue light in a lot of our electronics, and now we are very lucky to have, blue light filter, blue light glasses, or night mode that's on many of our tablets and computers and smartphones, so that we can decrease that blue light when we're getting ready to settle in for the night. That blue light actually triggers a little part in our brain that keeps us awake and prevents our natural melatonin from releasing and letting us go to sleep. So it's best to really put all the technology aside about 30 to 60 minutes before we're ready to go to bed, and settle in, maybe with some deep breathing or some other relaxation type techniques that can help us get to sleep. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those in a minute. Some other things for good physical care: massage, regular doctor's visits, staying home when you're sick. I think that, this is a presentation I've been doing prior to the pandemic, and So there was often, we would not necessarily stay home when we were sick. That's obviously something that's been talked about now. Any symptoms, we want to make sure that we're staying home. But even prior to that, it's important that we are taking care of our physical health. When we're not feeling well, we're not at our best to be able to take care of others either. Take technology breaks. So here we are circling back to that techno stress again. I think that we have to look at asking yourself, when was the last time I didn't have a phone in my hand, a television on, a computer in front of my face for longer than 5 or 10 minutes or longer than going to bed at night? Being able to take a good long break. I encourage you to challenge yourself to a day, maybe even a weekend. I know that might be asking too much, but taking that break and seeing what else you can do with that time and how much that frees up some of the stress that it might be creating for us. Going on vacations, I do realize that right now that's a little bit challenging, but we have hope that this is temporary and we'll be able to get out and start adventuring again. And dress comfortably. Now, that's not necessarily just dressing in active wear and yoga pants every day, but it's really about dressing for what you feel is really expressive of you, and that you feel a lot of self-confidence in wearing. Okay, let's look at our next domain then, emotional. So emotional is identifying, accepting, and expressing our feelings. So you see the first one on there, accept your feelings, they're all okay, really. We as a society have gotten pretty used to pushing some of those aside, not really wanting to give them the time and the space and the energy that they are in need of. So, being able to recognize and identify that we have this emotion and sitting with it for a minute can be very helpful. That can go through a couple of different avenues here. We can journal, we can talk about it. I tell my patients a lot, we have to get it off the hamster wheel. When we're not talking about it or writing about it, it is a thought, it is a feeling that is just running up here and not really having any place to go. When we can write about something, pen to paper write about something, or talk it out with a trusted individual, then we definitely process that differently through our brain, and it can help us to let go of it, to move beyond it. Cry when you need to cry, laugh often. You heard me say earlier, practice that self-compassion. We are very good at showing compassion to others, kindness and caring and warmth and the desire to help another human being. But how often do we bring that into ourselves and, recognize that what I'm going through right now is difficult and this is how I feel. I'm going through this really hard time and maybe I've just received this diagnosis and I'm really scared. And how do I care for myself right now? What do I need? We would definitely ask a loved one, a friend, a family member, what they need when we see them in pain. We need to do the same thing for ourselves. So let's go back to that, practice mindfulness. So mindfulness is really a buzzword and has been for several years now. But the idea of mindfulness is that we are in this present moment. We are right here, right now, without judgment, being very aware and very accepting of what is going on within our body, within our environment. So I like to, do a couple of activities in regard to practicing mindfulness just to get us kind of acquainted with what that looks like. And these are good ones to do really any time of the day, but we kind of start with that deep breathing. So breathing can come, you hear lots of people talk about breath work and lots of different techniques in our breathing too. But tonight I'm going to talk about 4, 4, 8. So it's 4 to the count of 4, inhaling through your nose, holding it for the count of 4, and exhaling out your mouth for the count of 8. So again, that's 4 in through the nose, hold for 4, exhale out 8. And the idea behind that is that, it's correcting that kind of stress response system that I talked about earlier, When we are very stressed and have kind of activated that fight, flight, freeze mode, then we see that our breathing really changes. It's usually pretty shallow. We usually have a rapid heart rate. Muscles become very tense. And what we are trying to do then is bring on that relaxation response for us. And that's done with our breath work. The way that we go about inhaling and exhaling in a controlled, slow manner allows us to kind of turn off that stress response, relax us, bring us back to what I call bring us back to center, so that we can think a little more rationally and can better manage what's going on, the stressors that are going on in our life. So again, that was 4-4-8. 4 in, hold for 4, out 8. And the counting is really important. It's actually allowing you to kind of distract your thinking pattern a little bit from that, whatever is creating the additional anxiety or stress for you. Another one that I really like to do in the beginning of mindfulness practices is a grounding technique. This grounding technique is 5-4-3-2-1. Some people call it the 5 senses. You can call it whatever you want. It's just bringing you into this present moment. So we're looking at paying attention to all 5 of our senses. So we start with 5 things that we can see, followed by 4 things that we can feel by touch, 3 things that we can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. And again, that's bringing in this sensory perception and kind of writing over some of the cognitions that might be going on, pulling us right into this moment and grounding us to exactly what's happening within our body and within our immediate environment. Okay, so that gives us a few or a couple ideas of what mindfulness can look like. You know, mindfulness also is yoga, it's meditation, there are mindful walks and body scans. Mindfulness, like I said, is this buzzword that is just coming everywhere right now. And we can find lots of different techniques that come into it. Okay, let's move on to the next domain then, spiritual. So this is an ongoing search for meaning and or religion, understanding of life and beyond. This is really important that we're making time for prayer, reflection, meditation, again, pulling some of that mindfulness back in here, spending time in nature. We have plenty of studies that show what a calming effect it is for us to be outdoors in nature, especially seeing vibrant green colors. Those are very calming for our mind. Expressing gratitude. So I like to start with the gratitude journaling is really our kind of, if we're new to the expression of gratitude, we're finding the good in every day. And, you know, that can look like being grateful for a certain person, an event, an experience that you had, you know, something beautiful that you saw, someone who you admire, someone that you feel like you can always rely on, or something that you're really proud of. Anywhere that you find that positivity, I feel like the expression of gratitude and gratitude journaling is really our plunge into positivity. It's changing some of those negative, anxious thoughts that can get stuck on that loop up there for us, and helping us to pull out some of those positives that are happening every day for us. We're reading poetry or inspiring quotes. Oftentimes for me, that is every morning. For those of you that may be familiar with Yogi Tea, there's a little quote on the side of the Yogi Tea tag every day, and this just happened to be my Yogi Tea tag for today, which I thought was really pertinent to the day. Appreciate yourself and honor your soul. Sounds pretty good for giving a self-care talk tonight. So that's my, inspiring quote of the day. But that can be anything, for some people that's, daily devotionals or finding a mantra or reading their favorite book, whatever it is that, that allows you to feel more connected to that meaning of life for you. Cherishing your optimism and hope, again, with that positivity and holding on to it, and identifying what is meaningful and notice its place, meaning give it time in your everyday life. When it doesn't matter which practice that might look like for you, but giving yourself an opportunity to bring that in every day is really inspiring for us and can help kind of set that path of positivity. Next, we have in the intellectual domain, so learning, critical thinking, creativity, interests. So this is really about trying a new activity, exploring a new place. I do realize right now that is a bit challenging. We can't get out and explore too many new places. Taking action to something that we've been avoiding. I think sometimes in speaking with my patients, the idea of doing something, a task on their to-do list, if you will, is very overwhelming. It's this big idea that's going to be very time-consuming and require many, many steps. And sometimes we just need to tail that down a little bit and be able to say, it's just one step that I have to take today. It's just one step towards facing that avoidance or facing that fear that I actually want to accomplish. Read a book, learn a new language, watch a documentary, all things that can kind of spark that learning and creative thinking for us. I'm going to spend a moment on reframe challenges into lessons. So, this is really about, and I'm calling them challenges. Some people may refer to them as a misstep or failure, but it is, any kind of barrier that we may have had to our goal for the day or the week or the month or the year, and looking at it in a different light, being able to recognize that when we make a mistake or we have that misstep or there are these challenges in our way, we're actually learning from them. There is a neuroscientist that I really enjoy, Kristen Race, and I watched a TED Talk, Mindfulness, Surviving to Thriving in the Brain, or something to that nature. And she talks about the rosebud thorn. I call it just the rose when I talk about it. But it is identifying the rose. So what was the good thing that happened today? What was that one good thing that you could pull out? The bud. What was that act of kindness that you practiced or you witnessed? For me today, that was, I went to Starbucks to get a cup of coffee, and I had on my badge that says my name and my title, which is Social Worker 2 here at MercyOne. And giving me my coffee, she thanked me for my service and told me she appreciated everything that I am doing to help right now. And that was such a genuine moment and was so very appreciated, and it really changed my entire thinking for the rest of the day. It's those little tiny things, those small words of thank you or a smile or holding a door open that can be just day changing for somebody. It completely shifts our thinking, our feeling, our mood for the day. And lastly is the thorn of the rosebud thorn. And the thorn is reframing that challenge. So looking at that mistake or that misstep, that challenge of the day, and being able to identify what you learned from it. We take those as stepping stones into finding success, accomplishing a goal. Those are very important events that are happening in our lives, and when we can take them and shift them from that negativity and put them into the positive light, it can really be transformational for us. Okay, so next we have social. So this is investment in relationships outside of our family. So this is staying connected with our friends, practicing kindness, as I just talked about with the rosebud thorn, chatting with our coworkers, participating in a book club, joining a support or interest group, volunteering. I think that, you know, a lot of this has become rather challenging for us as we have been practicing, you know, social distancing and not gathering as we are used to prior to the pandemic. But you know, this is where that technology that I talked about earlier that was creating stress is actually helpful for us at this point. You know, this is how we're giving talks like this through Zoom. This is how we can stay connected with friends, you know, during the holidays. This is how we are able to join book clubs and support groups at this time. So we're still able, you know, we're modifying what we're able to do, but we're still able to do it. Next, we have relational. So this is, you know, strengthening our relationships with our spouse, our partner, our children, our parents, our family, our village is what I sometimes refer to it as. So, you know, we're spending that quality time with our loved ones. We're attending special events. We're planning family dinners. We're establishing traditions, even if they do need to be modified this year. We're having fun together. I think that it's so important that we kind of get back to the core of finding joy and having fun in our life. You know, I've seen a lot lately, and speaking with some of my patients and seeing some different news segments on, you know, finding joy right now, and everybody's putting up Christmas trees and decorating their house for holidays and, you know, lights on the outside. I think whatever it is that we need to do to find joy within our family units, within our homes, is so important for us right now. We're definitely looking to find that in any aspect that we can. Lastly, I want to spend some time talking about knowing your love language and that of your loved ones. So this is from the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And when it was originally written, it was more about, you know, connecting, understanding your love language and the love language of your spouse. But I really believe that this can be applied to kind of all of our relationships. You know, the idea behind it is that we have a love language that we identify with, and that is how we go about showing love to others. And, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that our loved one has that same love language. So they may not feel that love being given to them because it's not the same. So the 5 love languages are words of affirmation. So this can be telling somebody that you appreciate them. It can be telling them that you love them. It can be telling them that you feel that they're beautiful or they look nice today. So anything that is going to be positive and inspirational for that individual. Quality time. So quality time is obviously spending good one-on-one time with your loved one. You know, this is an important time again to say technology break. It's time for us to put down those electronics and really be very present in the moment with that individual so that they can feel the importance of the relationship and feel the love that you are giving to them. Acts of service. So acts of service is oftentimes, you know, divvying up household duties and how we're going to manage our household together. This can be, you know, could you do the dishes, or could you make dinner? Those kind of things to show that, you know, we want to take part and help the other person in kind of our day-to-day responsibilities. Gifts, gift giving. So this can be, you know, big extravagant gifts, but more often than not, it's more on the end of the spectrum of a thoughtful gift. So something like receiving you know, your favorite gum, getting your spouse's or your partner's favorite gum while you're at the gas station or grocery store and bringing it home for them. Just showing them, I was thinking of you today. You're important to me and I love you. And lastly, the fifth love language is physical touch. And this is sitting close, holding hands, giving hugs, you know, all the way to intimacy, of course, too. But having that closeness, you know, there's a lot to be said about touch, the touch of another human being. It creates a lot of connection. It sets off that calming response that I was talking about earlier, where we're, you know, releasing oxytocin and serotonin. It's making us feel happy and bonded with the other person. It's really combating a lot of those stress hormones when we're feeling very connected emotionally and physically to another human being. And then we also have, lastly, professional and workplace. So this is important for us to understand what balancing our workload, being able to participate in some flex time scheduling, self-care and accountability buddy, you know, partnering up with somebody at work who is going to help us and hold us accountable for leaving the office when we say we want to leave the office, or saying no when we don't have any more room on our caseload, or we just can't take on one more task, or helping us to decide how we're going to go talk to our supervisor about an issue that we may be having. It's important for us to be taking breaks during the day, you know, breaks to have a bite to eat, breaks to get a drink of water, breaks to walk around. That can just really help us out tremendously to be able to just walk away from, again, that technology and see something different, stimulate the senses a little bit, step outside if you can. Regular supervision and consultation is also something that's very, very important for us. Being able to, you know, feel that we have somebody on our side, somebody to support us through some of the challenges that we may have with our day-to-day tasks or responsibilities in the office. Delegating, learning to ask for help. You know, this goes much further than just professional. We oftentimes need to learn when it's time to say no and when it's time to ask for some help. And when it's time to accept help. I feel like I have kind of both ends of the spectrum with a lot of patients that I see in regards to some have a lot of difficulty asking for help, some have a lot of difficulty accepting the help. You know, they're used to being more of the caretaker, if you will, by nature, and so it's almost embarrassing to them to have to ask and accept help. This is an important kind of life lesson all the way around. Identifying and practicing, or identifying tasks and projects that are rewarding for you. You know, yes, we're definitely going to have some tasks that are a little more daunting or mundane for us. Definitely some things that we don't necessarily care for, but we need to also make sure that we're spending the majority of our time doing things that we find to be very rewarding. We do spend a lot of time in our we spend a lot of time at work and in our professional lives, and we need to make sure that we are in a place where we feel rewarded by that, so that we're kind of combating against burnout or compassion fatigue, depending upon what our particular position might be. So again, with the setting boundaries with clients or colleagues, coworkers, supervisors, but really what I mean across the board with boundaries is we do need to be able to make sure that, you know, we can say, you know, my cutoff for today is 5 o'clock, and I'm going to leave at 5 o'clock because it's been a rough day and I need to spend a little bit of time taking care of myself or interacting and connecting with my family or my friends right now. So setting those boundaries and sticking to them are really important. Negotiating your needs. with your supervisor, your colleagues, and have transition from work to home. So this is, something, not to say that we don't need to have some good transition from home to work as well, but transition from work to home, allowing us to kind of get into the headspace of, I'm leaving this at the office and I'm going to now be going home. There needs to be, for some of us, that's a car ride and maybe some music. Some of us might need to have a quick walk. I have some patients who literally imagine, they do some imagery, and they're able to just kind of imagine themselves shedding off their work clothes, their work hat, and putting on their home hat, their home clothes, and being able to leave it where it needs to be. This is another one that I am finding is really challenging right now due to some of the changes and modifications we've made due to the coronavirus. So a lot of people are working from home now. So what do I do when I'm working from home? What's that transition going to look like? And so I've worked with some patients about, number one, making sure that you have a place in your home that is for work. So whether that's going to be an office or a desk in the corner of a room or whatever that might look like, that is the place where you work, and that is also the place that you don't pay any attention to when your work hours are done. So the transition part becomes a little more challenging, but being able to separate and have those boundaries between home and work is really important when we're working from the home and trying to manage all of our household responsibilities as well as work responsibilities. So those are the 7 domains there of self-care, and I hope that you've been able to take a look at what is working for you, what you're already doing, maybe some areas that you would like to bring into your self-care or your coping skills to better manage some of your stressors or even anxiety and depression symptoms that you may be experiencing. Are there any questions?
I'm looking for some questions and I don't see any, but you can use the question and answer or the chat at the bottom of your screen. Just move your cursor down there and those should pop up for you. Melissa, I had a couple of questions for you. Things like, I love the hamster wheel thought. I'm sure that's not a new one to you, but that was new to me. And that made perfect sense to me.
They get stuck up there, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not one for journaling, but the conversation with a trusted friend, I think, is a good thought that when you mentioned that, and then reframing the challenges into lessons. I'm completely guilty of focusing on the failures and the downward spiral is not very helpful.
It gets on that hamster wheel.
Yeah, if there would be like a 3D version of that, yeah. But the accepting helped too. When I was going through my cancer journey, I had a neighbor who told me that I really needed to suck it up and accept people's help better, and he was exactly right. That his comment was, you're not allowing people to the blessing that they deserve, and they're helping you and you don't graciously accept it. And I was really bad at that, but I got better. But it's hard.
It is. It's a big shift for us to go from having that overall independence and maybe not really ever needing to ask for help.
Yeah.
Although maybe it's best for us to sometimes, or accept the help, and then we're in an actual position where, okay, it's time for me to ask and accept. And that's a really hard shift. It's a matter of grieving some of our independence, I think, a lot of times.
Oh yeah, I would say that that's true. That it's, if you accept help, you admit that you can't handle it yourself, or you'd be better if you didn't handle it all yourself. And those are two things that most of us don't want to admit.
No, not at all. not at all.
So you see people who are going through their cancer journey. Is that the extent of the patients that you see?
I see cancer patients. I see some of my patients are newly diagnosed. Some are in the middle of their cancer journey. Some are a year or two removed
Okay.
from cancer and in remission. I also, on top of seeing cancer patients, I do see quite a few women that are struggling with postpartum, as well as perimenopause, menopause as well. And then I also receive some different referrals from our internal medicine as well for anxiety, depression, grief. I do a lot of that kind of work too.
And are you seeing most of your patients by Zoom or something similar to that?
Good question. So right now, I would say I'm about 50-50. The scales have done this a lot over the past 8-ish months. But right now I'm about 50-50 in office telehealth. So most insurance companies are still paying for telehealth sessions. So that's really helpful. I hope they continue that through this pandemic so that, you know, we can continue to reach out. It's really allowed me to go much further. This is so much more than just the pandemic. This has been helpful for my, you know, my patients who are undergoing treatment right now, you know, chemo and not feeling well enough to make it into the office. Before, they would have had to cancel the appointment. Now, you know, they feel okay to be able to turn on their phone or their computer and I can have a session with them laying on their couch. So it really has been amazing. It's been a really great experience for myself and my patients. I have a lot of great feedback.
Do you
Melissa,
think, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Dick.
Melissa, I really enjoyed your talk. A couple of things I would say. Number one, and you touched on this, that not only patients are going through stressful times right now, but those of us who are professional caregivers are also experiencing a lot of stress and can really take advantage of the skills of individuals like yourself. And the other thing, and I'll have you comment on both of these together, you know, we talked a little bit about the term mental health. And although mental health is a positive thing, in our society, when you hear the words mental health, you think of mental illness. And everyone deserves to have a primary care physician that helps promote health and wellness. And in these times of stress, I would say that all of us who have just normal life issues and don't consider ourselves having any mental illness would benefit by having some professional that helps us maintain mental health. And you gave some great examples, and maybe just elaborate on some of the things that you have witnessed, the struggles that professional caregivers are going through in these times of COVID.
Sure. So I'm definitely seeing a lot. I guess I should back up. In the spring, we did open up our services, our behavioral health services within the, obviously community-wide, but within our Mercy walls, and making sure that all of our workers knew that there was a place that they could come between ourselves, our little team, and then also House of Mercy was taking on some of those patients as well. So I definitely, especially in the spring, and it's starting to go that way again right now with the rise in numbers, saw a lot of nurses that are having the direct contact with COVID patients and the stress that it's bringing to them. Number one, to witness that level of illness to that capacity, not just through the loss, but also watching them struggle. And then of course, also with the number of deaths that a lot of them have witnessed. And, you know, some of these are newer nurses, newer to the field. And so that also brings on another layer of stress. I also, taking that a little bit further, have seen quite a few nursing students that have wanted to talk about the stress of getting ready to graduate and walk into a pandemic and providing their services. So, really I offer a safe space for people to be able to come in and talk about the stress, the anxiety, sometimes the grief that comes with that, being able to find how they can balance their workload, their very, very busy workload, and still be able to go home and connect with loved ones or not. I have had quite a few healthcare professionals too, long-term care healthcare professionals that are choosing not to be in the home with their family right now. And so that has been, another layer of stress for us at this time, that we don't necessarily have the ability in our self-care plan to go connect with our spouse or our children or our parents or our friends because of what we're doing on those front lines. So, really helping them through that very challenging time as well, and dealing with some of the grief that comes with that loss in their life too. And I think the other part, Dr. Deming, I just remembered you had a first part to that. I think the other part of that too was talking about mental health, that, is so often stigmatized as mental illness. And so understanding that our mental health is something that is, it's the state of our emotions and our social well-being. And it is all about, it affects the way that we think, the way that we feel, the way that we behave, how we're interacting with others. It affects everything that we're doing in our life. So just the same way that we go in and meet with our doctor for an annual checkup to make sure that we're all tip-top with what's going on physically, it's also important to be checking in and seeing what's going on mentally, right? What's my emotional and my mental well-being looking like right now? So, definitely don't have to have the anxiety and the depression or any of the other chronic illnesses that I didn't talk about tonight, but we don't have to go as far as having anxiety and depression. Sometimes we want to be preventative and be able to come in when we feel like, wow, this is a stressor just a little bit outside of my comfort zone. I don't know that I have, I don't think my bag of coping skills or my self-care plan is up to par for this one. And I just want to go in and talk it out. That's the other, that's the other side of it, is being very preventative and making sure that we're taking good care of ourselves and our mental and emotional.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the value, the therapeutic value of engaging in an authentic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be medications.
Right.
It's engaging in a thoughtful, authentic, caring relationship, discussing these issues that are causing stress in our lives, and how do we cope with them in the most healthy way, and how do we maintain our mental health along with our physical health.
Absolutely. And I think Chris brought up, what some of the biggest challenges I see in my patients, excuse me, is that, that reframing that we do of the challenges, to recognizing that those are life lessons for us, and that we can build off of those. That is a difficult thing to do. Setting boundaries is another thing that's very challenging for a lot of us, whether we're talking about work or home or friends or whatever that might look like. Very challenging things. So again, when I said, let's kind of talk about what the self-care plan looks like and what you're already doing, what you might want to bring into play. Some of these things that you might want to bring into play, you're not quite sure how to take the first step to do that. That again, a professional can help you, kind of formulate a plan and learn how to go about initiating that.
Well, so you mentioned referrals, that you get referrals from doctors. Is that how patients connect most easily with you, or is there a possibility for people who might be watching tonight to connect with you in a more direct way?
Yes, so most of my patients come to me through referrals, through the doctors here at the Comfort Health Center, as well as the doctors in the internal medicine. I do have a direct line. They're welcome to reach out to me directly if they don't want to go through their primary care provider. That's perfectly fine. There's no need to do that. That's just usually we all, like I said, we start with that physical, right? We go in, we meet with our PCP for a physical,
Right.
and a lot of times the doctors are then saying, hey, you know what might also be helpful, and that's where I'm getting the referral.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been good. I think your presentation was so thorough that people really understood, and it clicked with most, because when we don't get questions, that means people are really getting what you're talking about.
I
So
hope
that's
so.
good. Yeah, absolutely.
I hope so.
Absolutely.
It's also
Well,
very personal. It's sometimes
yeah.
hard to ask questions about this stuff because it's very personal for us. So
Mm-hmm.
people can feel free to reach out if they would like to talk about that on a one-on-one, on an individual basis.
Yeah, that's very good. Well, I certainly learned a great deal, and I'm sure our audience did as well. And this will be housed on our YouTube channel at Above and Beyond Cancer, so people will get to look in when they can, if they weren't able to join us this evening. So thanks again. This has been very interesting to me.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Melissa. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all you do for our patients, and thanks for sharing your expertise tonight.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity.